Okay. So welcome to session number 16. We are in story design and we just finished the pre-session Q&A. So now we are in the main class for session number 16. So as customary, I'll just put everybody on mute and then we will start the main class. If possible, we'll have a couple of questions within the class. If not, then we will take them in the post-session Q&A. So let's start with some refresher. Yesterday, what we covered was linked analysis. So what is linked analysis? Linked analysis is basically linking different widgets in a story. So linked analysis controls the behavior of input control filter to all the widgets or to selected widgets only. So you can exclude certain widgets. You can detach certain widgets from the input controls. What is an input control? We know input control is your page filters, right? Then linked analysis can also be used between the page story widgets apart from the input controls. So now we are not talking about the input controls. Within a story or within a page, we have different widgets like a chart or a table or a geo map. So those can also interact with each other. The default behavior is they will not touch other widgets, but with the linked analysis configuration, you can tell them that you can impact other widgets also, and you should impact all of them, or should you impact only selected of them. You can configure and provide that information. And that includes data point filtering as well. So one is the basic filtering on one widget applying to the other. And then there is a data point level filters also, which will be cascaded to other widgets. Cascaded means it will impact to other widgets also. Like for example, on a map, you just click on one bubble, and for that bubble, if that is a country bubble, then that country will be also restricted on the impacted other widgets. So that is called data point filtering, and that is also possible with linked analysis. So that is a very handy feature, and that controls the interactions in a story or in a page. Then we also saw contextualization in SAC, which is basically providing some comparisons between different time frames. So the most frequently used contextualization tools in SAC are conditional formatting. So giving the color coding, green, yellow, red, for the different thresholds. So if it meets a threshold or if it's greater than the threshold, then we usually give it a green color. If it is between the minimum and the threshold, then we give it a warning color, a yellow usually. And then if it is below the minimum which is required, then it is a red color. That means that is a problematic area. We need to look into that. So those kind of color coding can be done easily with conditional formatting. Then we have reference lines. Reference line is basically to provide either a fixed reference or a dynamic reference, so that on a charts, usually on the charts, you can easily see how different customers or products are performing with respect to that reference. That reference can be average, that reference can be minimum, that reference can be maximum of the measure, whatever measure you are analyzing. And these can also be dynamic in nature, meaning it can connect to measure input controls. Measure input controls gives you the flexibility to choose between different measures on the same widget. The same widget can show you different measures based on what user selects. And these reference lines can respect that and can connect to the same measure input control. Then the third one we saw was variance analysis. Variance analysis is basically giving you the year on year or quarter on quarter or time frame comparisons with delta showing either in green if it is a positive or red if it's a negative. And you can of course invert the colors. You can say that positive show in red, negative show it in green. And we saw that number of customer meetings was one of the measures where the invert colors applied made sense. So those are the three most frequently used. That doesn't mean that these are the only ones. We have a lot of other options as well. But these three definitely are the most frequently used and helpful to provide some context for the charts and other widgets. Then we also saw some miscellaneous features like how to enable totals in a table, how to enable in-cell charts. So within a cell of a particular table widget, how can you show the number in a bar chart format? So that is your in-cell charts. And then we also saw page hiding and deleting. You can either hide a page or you can delete a page. And finally, we ended with R server integration concept. So we didn't have to do anything special. R server automatically comes embedded within SAC, but you can change that R server to your custom R server as well by going to the system administration and external systems. And if you don't want to do that, you can still do a lot of custom R language based widgets like word cloud chart, what we saw yesterday. You have to write a small script in R language, and that script will load the library. That script will also execute the function, and the function we used was the word cloud function, which accepts two parameters mostly important ones, which is your word and your frequency. Frequency is your measure and word is your dimension, which will show up on the word cloud. And then you have scale, color, all those aesthetic or styling related parameters. But main two parameters was word and frequency. And that's the R server power. You can have many more functions. R server has libraries. Library is basically a collection of functions. So you can have hundreds of functions you can use and then enable the visualization. So one example was word cloud, which we saw yesterday. So those were the points we covered yesterday. Today, the main agenda for the session is calculations. Calculations in SAC are the most frequently used functionality, I would say. And that enables us to do a lot of custom requirements, a lot of customer scenarios by having it dynamic in a story. You can also have calculations done at a model level, and you can also have calculations done at a story level. When will you do at model level? When it is a reusable calculation in multiple stories. If that calculation has to be reused in multiple stories, then the best place is do it at a model level. And we saw that we have a drop down in the workspace called calculations when you go inside a model. And there you can create your calculated measures. So that is one place that enables reusability. But if the calculations are story specific, they are not, they don't need to be reused in multiple stories, then you can create the calculation in the story itself. So that's what we will zoom into today. So calculated measures in a story, the calculation editor allows you to create calculations. Okay, so we will see how to enable that editor for a chart or for a table. It applies to both. For each type of calculation, a new calculated member is created and then that is used in the measure grouping. So a new measure is created, which is your calculated measure. And that measure then behaves like any other measure which can be added to your story. You can also use dimension attributes as part of a calculation. So dimension attribute means properties. The properties of a dimension can also be used inside the editor, calculation editor, to do some calculations. So that is also possible. That means you can refer to the attribute value. When I say attribute, I should not use the word attribute. Attribute is more from a BW standpoint. Property. You can also use property values as part of a calculation. Okay. So say for example, I'll give you an example. So we had customer and customer has hierarchy. In our example, we enabled hierarchy. there are two nodes in that hierarchy, or two hierarchies rather. One is segment and one is the status. So if you want a calculation like if my segment is ABC, then you do this calculation. If my segment is XYZ, then you do this. Then you can refer to that property of the customer dimension, which is the segment, and then do the calculation. So basically, dimension properties can also be used inside a calculation. That's what it is trying to say. We can create both calculated measures and calculated dimensions as well. Okay, so the calculations are not restricted to only measures. It can also be done for dimensions, which we will see. These are your supported calculation types. Okay, very important to understand and keep in mind which one you should use for what. So what are the supported calculation types? First one is calculated measure. Calculated measure means suppose the mathematical calculation is required, like percentage calculation, or you want to subtract two measures, or you want to divide two measures, or you want to do some if condition or mathematical formulas, then you will go for calculated measure. So we'll create one today. Then you have the second type as restricted measure. Restricted measure means you want to see the measure but with a dimension restriction. Like for example, you want to see only Canada sales or Canada order value, okay, or unit sold. Or you want to see only United States unit sold. You don't want to see all country. So if you have a requirement where you have to restrict the measure based on a certain condition, then you will go for restricted measure. Year to date, YTD, calculation can also be very easily done with restricted measure. The dimension which will be used for that restriction will be the date dimension. And the moment you use the date dimension, you will see that there are a host of options you can use, like YTD or QTD, MTD. So all those can be easily created with restricted measures. Then you have difference from. Difference from relates to dates. Okay. So basically, what you are saying is, tell me the difference of the current selected value of the date dimension in my story versus a previous date or any other specific date and time relative to what I am seeing in the story. So if I am seeing 2018 data, then relative to 2018, if I specify a previous time frame, then it is going to show me the difference between previous value and the current value, and it can also be shown in a percentage format or an absolute value format. So difference is connected to dates. Please remember that. Difference from is always connected to date dimension. Aggregation, next one. Aggregation is basically if you want to have average or if you want to have minimum, maximum, your some quarantine, or there are a lot of aggregation which are apart from sum. See, summation is the default. But if you want anything other than summation, like your average, minimum, maximum, and some median, mode, etc. So all those special type of aggregations can be like count. Count can be one of the aggregation. You don't want sum, but you just want a count. Then that will come under aggregation. So those special types of aggregation can be easily achieved here. Then you have date difference. Date difference is basically, suppose you have two dates, okay, and you want to calculate the difference between them in months. You want to provide a particular date, which is 2024, today's date, for example, current date, and then you want to know what is the difference in months or in days or in years between the current date and the date of my data. So say in our example, the data is only there for 2017, 18 and 19. If I do a date difference between current date and whatever is shown on the report, then I will see the number of months or number of years or number of days between current date and the date which is there in my data. So that time interval differences or calculations between the times, like or between the dates to calculate number of months, number of days, number of years, that is achieved with date difference. Okay. So there is a slight difference between difference from and date difference. Okay. It might sound similar, but they are different. How? Difference from is basically a value difference of your measure. So if you say that, okay, in 2017, what was the order value? And in 2019, what is the order value? That difference is your difference from. There also date is involved. But in date difference, there is no measure involved. This is just a pure calculation between two dates. There is no measure here. But here there is a measure with respect to a time frame. So today's data compared to the previous year's data, show me the difference. That is difference from. But in date difference, there is no measure involved. This is just pure date calculations. But in both the cases, date is very important. Okay, because both are connected to date and time. Then we have dimension to measure. So if you want to convert a dimension to a measure, like for example, if you have a string, but you want to convert it to a numeric format, then there is an option called dimension to measure. Like for example, you have a property, okay, of a dimension which is numeric form. Like for example, aging analysis. Like you have a property for your customer, like how old is the customer in terms of doing business with us. So is the customer with us for last 5 years? Is the customer for us for last 10 years? That kind of a property can be maintained for a customer, right? And if you want to sum it up, okay, that's all. Although it's a dimension and a property of the dimension, but you can convert that to a numeric format and add them up if it makes business sense. That's why SAP has given the option to convert the dimension values to measures. But please be cognizant of the fact that the values should be numbers. It should not be alphabets. Alphabets will show blank. If you put a dimension or a dimension property here and you ask SSC to convert it to measure, it will expect numbers there. It will not expect alphabets. If it encounters alphabets there, then it will just show you blank. For numbers, it will convert it to a numeric format and then you can add them, subtract them and do all the arithmetic calculations. But it has to be numbers. It has to make business sense, right? So please be cognizant of that. But that option is there to convert dimensions to measures. Then you have running total. Running total is basically your average or your minimum, maximum. Basically, we usually do average as running total. Like for example, the first record is $100. Then the running total is 100. Second record is $200. So now my running total will be 100 plus 200 divided by 2 equals to 150. So that running total will show 150. And then next one will be added and will be divided by 4. Next one will be added divided by 5. So a running total will be created as a separate column, and then you can easily do some calculations with that running total, or you can see the business context around that. So it is also one of the most frequently used option of running total. And it can be done in a table or a chart based on the dimension in the widget. So that is another type of calculation, running total, you can do it. And then we have currency conversion for models with currency conversion enabled. If the currency conversion is not enabled, you will not see this currency conversion option. If the currency conversion is enabled, then you will see the currency conversion. Currency conversion is a topic which we will cover in depth in the future sessions when we will go for planning. not now. But you just have to be aware that currency conversion will also be shown in the calculated measures if the currency conversion is switched on in the model. And if it is there, then you can have a separate column where you can say, please convert my currency based on an exchange rate. So if you want to convert from US dollars to GBP or US dollars to INR, then you have to have that exchange rates. And then using those exchange rates, you can do the currency conversion and show them as a separate column. So that is also one of the calculated measures you can create. You have to keep in mind, guys, that not all data sources for the models support all calculation type. Like if a model is based on live data connectivity, you might not see everything which what I have listed here. But if the model is import data, you might see more of these options than live connectivity. So it depends on what kind of a source the model is connected to. If it's a live connectivity, then you will have limited. If it's an import data, then you will have all of them. Because when once the data is there in SAC, then SAC has the complete control and it can do all these type of logic. But if it's a live model, then there will be some limitations and you can only do certain things. You cannot do other things. Of course, SAC is introducing more and more features of live model as well with every quarterly release, QRC. But don't be surprised if you don't see everything for your specific model because it might be a live model. In a measure-based model, developers can create calculated measures in the model in case where they need to be shared across stories. That's what I mentioned. The calculations can happen at two levels, model level and story level. When will you go for model level? When that particular calculation has to be shared across stories. If that is your requirement, then push down the calculation to model because it can be reused. But in both the cases, it is not stored. Please note this fact that when you create a calculation, it is not a stored value. It will be calculated at runtime. Whenever you will execute the data preview from the model or whenever you will execute the story based on that model, that calculation will come alive and it will show the values. But it is not stored. It is not like a data action. Data action, on the other hand, which again we will discuss in the planning, data action stores the value beforehand. It's like a pre-calculated value which will be stored in the model and then stories will just show the value. But these are dynamic runtime calculations. They will not be stored. Whether you create at the model level or whether you create at a story level, they both will be at a runtime. It will be executed and shown to you. So the more you create these dynamic calculations, the lesser will be your optimization. If you have 50, 60 such calculations, then your story performance will be degraded because it has to calculate everything at runtime and that takes time. So that's why keep them balanced. Don't create too many story calculations or very complex story calculations and a lot of them, then your performance will be degraded. So just be cognizant of that fact. But they are very, very handy. And with HANA becoming more and more powerful, these calculations, these dynamic calculations are also working pretty fast. So as long as you keep it to a sane level and don't go insane, then it is fine. It should not be a performance issue. And also it depends on volume of data, right? These calculations, if they are operating on few hundred thousands versus if it is operating on millions and billions of record, then of course you will see some performance issues there. Okay, one important point. Since a measure-based model can contain an account dimension as well, what does this mean? They are talking about the flex model. Flex model is the new type of a model, measure-based model, which also has account. If you remember, measure-based model has two types, pure measure-based and flexible. Flexible means it has an account dimension and it also has multiple measures. And because these new type of models, measure-based models can have account dimension as well, it does not support cross calculations. It doesn't need to support cross calculations. Cross calculation was also a type of calculations which are still available for the old account-based models, the classic models, but SAP recommends not to use them anymore. For any new developments, go for the new measure-based models because it can have both account dimension and multiple measures. So you don't need cross calculation. Cross calculation is basically your calculation which cuts across the multiple dimensions or multiple measures and your account dimension. So since in the new measure-based model, you already have both of them, you don't need the cross calculation, and that's why the new measure-based model does not support cross calculations. In a classic account model, it is calculated. Cross calculations I'm not covering today because we are mostly looking at a new measure-based model. If you guys are interested to understand what is a cross calculation, how it works, then we can take it up in the upcoming sessions. But cross calculations are no longer supported for the measure-based models, and there is a good reason, right? So please take a note of that, because many people have complained that okay, previously cross calculation was there and new measure-based model doesn't support. Why? The reason is because you can now have account dimension and multiple measures. Previously, it was not possible. Previously, you can only have one measure and then account dimension, and then you can play around and use a cross calculation. But now you can have both of them, so you don't need cross calculation. Okay, how to create calculated measures. So we saw that these are the types of calculated measures, but how do you create them? You create it in the builder panel. So if you go to a story, in the story, let me go to our folder. The story which we were working with, sales analysis geo. So here in the builder panel, you create those calculated measures. And when I say calculated measures, I'm talking about these. So click on a widget and go to edit view first of all. Okay. Let the story load. Sometimes we call it rendering, story rendering. Rendering means loading of the stories. So there is an option called light viewer also for these SSC stories, which we will discuss later on. But light viewer and the full viewer has some performance differences. Light viewer loads faster and the full viewer or the edit mode loads a little bit slower. So there are two options now with the new Q1 2024. I think it was introduced in Q1 2024. We have a light viewer mode also for these stories, which is a faster rendering. So that's what we will do. If time permits, I'm going to discuss that at the end. But for now, I'm going to show you where to create. So if you click on a particular widget and go to the builder panel, if you go to the measures, as we know, all measures are grouped together, right? That's why you don't see three different measures separately. So you will see that in the measure grouping, you have three model measures: customer meetings, units, or order value. And here if you hover over here, you will see the triple dots, and there you can create your calculation. So this is your calculated measures, and this is where you will get all those options to create restricted versus date difference, difference from, etc. So this is where you will create your calculated measures. Okay. So when setting up your calculation, you apply the typical formulas, conditions, operators, your functions, Boolean operations, all those is really easily possible. And please don't forget, any editor you are using inside SSC, your friend is Control Space. Control Space, when you click on it, you will get the help, and then you will also get some examples also, like for a function, if you want to know what is the syntax of the function with actual real examples, then that is also provided with the help which can be called upon with Control Space. So control space is your friend whenever you're writing a formula. Now, you have to be aware of one small thing. There is a concept of simple calculations versus full-fledged calculations. These are your full-fledged calculations, okay? Regular calculated measure. But there is a simpler form of the calculation also there, which do not need you to go into the builder panel and click on the three dots and add calculation. You don't need to do that. If your requirement is pretty simple and it is not a complex one, then you don't need to call the builder panel. You can just do simple calculations. And those simple calculations can be easily called like this. So if you have customer meeting or for example unit sold, you can click on unit sold, right click on it, and there's an option called add client calculation. The add client calculation will give you these options. Okay, you are limited to these, but at least you are able to do these simple calculations. And when you select multiple of them, like for example, unit sold and order value, and then right click and then add client calculation, then you get those simple calculations which apply to two measures like subtraction between the two measures, multiplication between two measures, percentage difference, percentage share, division, etc. Simple calculations. So these simple calculations can be called without calling the builder panel by doing a right click and going into add client calculation. So those are called simple calculations. So please be aware of that as well. So that's what it is mentioning. You can add simple calculations by selecting one or two measures and right click and choose add client calculation. Okay. They are missing the word client here. So it's called add client calculation and then you can choose the simple ones. But if you have a complex requirement, then of course you have to go in the builder panel and then do all your complex or full-fledged calculations. Now, when you do simple calculations, there is an option of single versus repeating. The difference is, it is important to understand, okay? Single means it will only apply to one particular measure. Repeating means it will apply to the same measure across the dimensions. So that is the difference between single and repeating. That means single will only apply to that particular instance of the measure, but repeating will apply to all the combination of the dimension and that measure for that particular measure. Confusing? Did you understand this, guys?
No.
No.
Can you repeat?
Okay. I thought so. So let's do the practical. Okay, then I think you will understand. So let me then first complete simple calculation, and then we will go to full-fledged calculation. Okay, there is a screenshot also here. I'll try to explain the screenshot, and then we will go in the system and do it. Okay. So here, see, they are doing a simple calculation. They don't have the builder panel enabled. So what they are doing? They are doing a right click on gross margin. So we have two measures here, sales revenue and gross margin. And what is the dimension? Dimension is region. So for all these regions, this is my this is my sales revenue, this is my gross margin. They are right clicking on the gross margin, add calculation, subtract single. Subtract single means it is just going to subtract the gross margin and sales revenue. Okay, so from sales revenue, they are going to subtract gross margin. So 146,326 minus 30,000 is 115,561. Simple subtraction. The repeating is not required here. Repeating doesn't make sense also here. Why? Because we only have one dimension here. So repeating doesn't make sense. When will repeating make sense? when you have multiple dimensions. Now look at this. We have region and now we have added product category also. That means for APJ, Asia Pacific, you have sales revenue gross margin for soft drinks. For Asia Pacific, you have sales revenue gross margin for juice as well. For Asia Pacific, you have gross margin and sales revenue for alcohol as well. That means these measures are repeating. The sales revenue gross margin is repeating. Here it is also repeating. Here it is also repeating. Now if you say subtract, so you select these two and you right click and you say add client calculation, subtract repeating. That means it is going to repeat this subtraction for every instance of that particular measures for the combination of the dimensions. If it is repeating in multiple instances, here for soft drinks it is repeating, they have both, juice they have both, alcohol they have both. So all of them, if you need the subtraction, then you will go for repeating. Now does it make sense? Is it clear, guys? What is the difference between single
Yes.
and repeating?
So when we have, for example,
Yes.
more than one dimension.
Exactly. See, repeating makes sense if there are more than one dimension. Because only when there is a more than one dimension, then the measures will repeat for them. And if the measures repeat for them, the calculation will also repeat for those. Now you tell me, in this, does repeating make sense in this instance? You just have region-wise sales revenue gross margin. No, it does not. Because my gross margin is and sales revenue are not repeating for multiple instances of the dimension. If it would have been repeating, then yes, my calculation also repeating makes sense. But here it makes sense because now I have region and product category, and a combination will have repetition. Soft drinks will have repetition, juice will have same, alcohol will have same sales revenue gross margin, and the subtraction should happen for each one of them. So that is what is repetition means, repeating means. Okay. Okay. So in our example, if we have to do that, let's do that. Let's try to do that. So if I have, okay, in my table, I have customer meetings, units sold, order value. Okay. So what I will do is I will have percentage share. Say, for example, I will have percentage share. Before I do percentage share, I will first calculate a unit sold for only United States, for example. So what we will do is, this is the unit sold for each country, right? Then we will have a measure which will be units sold for only United States. And then we will say percentage share of the Canada compared to the other countries. So that is the percentage share. Or what we can do is, okay, let's do this. Let me first duplicate the page. We are in page number 1. Page number 2 was our canvas. Page number 3 was our visualization. Yeah. Okay. So let me duplicate the page because I don't want to disturb this particular page. We have everything nicely configured. So I'm going to do all my modifications in the next page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. So it is going to duplicate the page. Now I can play around. So what I will do is I'm going to make this lane slightly bigger so that it's clearly legible, visible to you guys. I'll make this slightly bigger because we are going to play around with this. Okay, so now what we will do is we are going to change the rows and columns. So what I will do is I will click on this widget, go to the right hand side panel, and then instead of sales agent, let me add for rows, I'm going to add my product type. So we have product, expand that. I will add product type and I will remove sales agent. And for columns, I'm going to add customer segment. Okay. And then what I will have is unit sold, retailer customer meeting, unit sold. Yeah, I think this has good data. So what I have done is I have removed the sales agent. I have added customer segment as my columns, and in my rows, product type is there. So I have two product types, mountain bikes and racing bikes. And what are the customer segments? Direct retail, wholesale, direct retail, wholesale, direct retail on the order value. So if I expand this further, let me make this bigger and expand this further. Okay. So now I have direct retail, wholesale, direct retail, wholesale, direct retail. This is repeating. This is repeating for customer meetings. This is repeating for units sold. This is repeating for order value. And here it is green because we have the conditional formatting for units sold. That's why it is showing all green, but you can ignore that for now. If you want, you can get rid of the threshold as well. So how you do that is go to the measure grouping, triple dot, and then thresholds. And then right now show threshold is checked. Uncheck that and the threshold will be gone. Just to have a clear view of the calculation. Now, if I want to know that what is the percentage share of retail and wholesale, okay, or maybe the difference between retail and wholesale, that can be a simpler one, or you can have any calculation. So what we'll do is we will select retail and wholesale, okay, right click on it, add client calculation, and then you can say percentage share, or you can say subtract. So if I say subtract and if I say single, it will subtract 1653 minus 1633 is 20. Did it do it for units sold? No. Did it do it for order value? No.
Hey, Devanshu, I'm not able to see your screen. Like it's only showing the geomap.
You are not able to see the table?
Yeah, right now, since you slided it, then I'm able to see the screen. But earlier,
okay. Yeah, no, thank you for letting me know. So let me go back. Okay, Control Z. When you press Control Z, your undo option is done. Okay, now can you see?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll put it in a different page. That is probably better. So that this issue doesn't come. Okay, let me copy this widget. Okay. And I'm going to duplicate this. So copy this, copy to a new responsive page. Okay. We'll have a different page just with the table. That will be better. Now, is it visible to you? Clear?
Okay. Yes.
Now what we'll do is, again, same thing. So I want the difference between retail and wholesale. What is the difference? So what I will do is, I will select this and then drag this. That means I'm selecting this plus this. And then I'm right clicking on it and I'm saying add client calculation, subtract. If I say single, it will only apply to my customer meetings. But if I say repeating, it is going to repeat for customer meetings and units sold and order value. So that subtraction will happen for all the three. And why this was applicable? Because I have two dimensions, one in the rows, one in the columns. So that's why my direct retail wholesale customer meetings are all there. Unit sold, again direct retail wholesale, order value, again direct retail wholesale. So direct retail wholesale is repeating. And because it is repeating, the repetition option for the client calculation is also repeating. So that is the difference between the repeating and single. Now if I press Ctrl Z, and now if I only want to do this for my order value, I don't want to do this for units sold, I don't want to do it for customer meetings, then you will come to order value and then select these two, right click, add calculation, client calculation, subtract, but now it is single. I only want the subtraction to happen for a order value, not for customer meetings or units sold. Then you will use single. Otherwise, if you want to apply for all, you will use repeating. That is the difference between single and repeating. And these are simple calculations. These are not your full-fledged complex calculation where you have to call the builder panel, but these are simple calculations. And if you see, these calculations will now show you in the measure grouping. So if you, or in the dimension grouping, in one of them, it will show you. So if you click on this widget, expand the builder panel, you will see there is something called one story calculation for customer segment. What is that story calculation? Subtract. So that is your story calculation. So that is how it will show you. Because we did it for customer segment, we selected retail and wholesale. That's why it is showing under the grouping of customer segment, we have a story calculation, which is your subtraction. So this is how it will show you. One story calculation, 3 model measures. Your direct measures are called model measures, and then your story calculations will show you separately here. So this is a simple calculation. Okay. Now, in the simple calculation, you will get some options. Like for example, if you hover over it, these are all the options you will get. You can delete that. You can also do formatting. Okay, if you click on this, then there is some scale formatting, your decimal places formatting. So for example, these are all disabled now. Why these are disabled? Because we have 2 checkboxes checked. One is saying use number formatting of data cells. That means whatever the data, actual data cells for which you use the calculation, use the same number format. So that's why these are all disabled. It will not allow you. If you want to override, deselect that. And then also unit. If you don't want to use the unit of the underlying calculation like retail and wholesale, then you can deselect that as well. And there's difference if you want to see in thousands, millions. So if I do 1000 and decimal places, I can do 0 and I will say okay. Then they will be in the subtraction will show you in 1000, 1747,000, 2448,000. So on and so forth. So you can change the formatting for all these simple calculations by coming to the story calculation, hovering over the actual calculation, and then clicking on the edit formatting option. So that you can do. Okay. And then of course, you can also change the formula. So the actual formula, you can come here and change that, edit calculation. That also you can do. And then of course, you can delete the calculation. So that is basically your simple calculations. Okay, one thing, simple calculation, sometimes we get confused that if you hover over it and if you click on this FX, nothing happens. Come here, click on the formatting, a pop-up opens. So you can change the formatting options. But if you come hover over the FX option, nothing is happening. I'm not able to edit the formula. First of all, did I actually write a formula for this? No, I did not write any formula for this. So then why is it showing me the option to edit the formula? And where can I edit the formula? That can be one of the confusing aspects, and that can be your question as well. If you are new to SAC, you might feel, a little bit lost because Usually when you create the full-fledged calculation, you will get an option to edit. So for example, if I create a simple calculation here, which will be my Canada unit sold. Okay, so if I want to create Canada unit sold, that means I am wanting a restricted measure. Okay, so what I will do is I will come to measures, 3 dots. Now I am going into full-fledged calculation, not simple calculation anymore. So add calculation. Now I'll give restricted measure and I will say units sold Canada. Okay, same thing you can just give in the description as well. What do I want? I want units sold and I want to restrict it with country, and the country should be select by member, and always select the ID. Don't forget this ID and description both should be selected under the settings, and then you say Canada. So select that, click on OK. Constant selection I don't require right now. I'll just say OK. And now I have here also story calculation. So 3 model measures plus 1 story calculation. Where is my story calculation? There you go. Units sold Canada. So you see here, units sold Canada is now showing for direct customers, retail customers and wholesale customers. For direct customers, I only have Canada for my mountain bikes. There is no racing bikes sold in Canada. That's why it's not showing any data. There are mountain and racing bikes both sold for retail customers in Canada and wholesale customers in Canada. So this is my unit sold Canada. This is basically a calculation I just did, and that applied automatically to all the customer segments, whatever is there. Now, please pay attention. If I go to this story calculation, same options on the hover over I will get. So I will get the formatting option. I can change that. I will get the edit calculation. The moment I click edit calculation, immediately it throws me that editor, calculation editor, and there I can change if I want to change anything. But for the simple calculation, this guy, subtract, when I click on FX, nothing happens. Why? Because the formula cannot be edited unless you enable the formula bar. These simple calculations can be edited, but only if you enable the formula bar. Then you can see the calculation and then you can edit the calculation as well. So the question is, how do you enable formula bar? So if you want to edit formula, you want to enable formula bar, by default it will not be shown to you. What you have to do is you have to come to tools, triple dots, and there is something called formula bar. Click on the formula bar. Now you will see the calculation is I2 minus J2. So that means my formula which is subtract is I2 minus J2. And now you can edit it as well. And when you click on it, it will show you the yellow color is I2, which is retail, and my orange color is J2, which is your wholesale. So your formula bar has to be enabled if you want to edit the simple calculations. But if you want to edit the full-fledged calculations, of course, you can come to this measure and then click on the FX and then it will throw you that editor. Now here, how do you know that this is I and this is J? And for example, if you want to change it to some other column, right now from the color coding, you know, it is yellow is retail I and orange is wholesale, which is J. But what about if you don't know the numbering? Like for example, if this is B, if this is C, or if this is D, or if this is E, which one is which one? Which one is E, which one is A, which one is I, which one is J? If you want to know that, then you have to enable another aspect of the table, which is called headers. which is called table headers. So what you will do is you will click on this widget, go to the context menu, okay, and then you will see show and hide. And in the show and hide, you will see column/row headers. The moment you click there, then it will show you the column alphabets and the row numbers. Now you immediately know that my subtract here is I2. This is my I2 minus J2. 2 is basically my description, and that's why here also it is just a description. Actual calculation will happen here. Okay. So here you see it changed and it gave the actual number, the calculation result. Here we are seeing in thousands, but this is an absolute value. And then if you click on this T, it will. Okay, if I think here, yeah. So if you click on the header of that particular simple calculation, then you will see the actual calculation. But if you click on the value, then you will see the actual value. Okay. So this is how you will.
Sorry. The formula calculation is shown to the user, or it's only to the developer on the edit mode?
That's a good question. I think it is shown to the user also. Maybe they will not be able to edit it, but they should be able to see it. Let's see. So let's save this story first. That's a good question. I think formula bar I have seen in the view mode as well, but I might be wrong. So if you click on the view, you will go to the view mode and let's see if formula bar is available there. Yeah, so you see, the more heavy your story, the more time it's going to take to load, because we have the GeoMap widget, we have the time series widget, we have the numeric chart. So this story rendering takes time. That's why SAP has introduced a light viewer mode, which loads a little faster than your actual full viewer. Okay, so here, this is a view mode by the way, guys. Okay. Now, if I select display, show, hide, filter panel, tools, formula bar. Yes, formula bar is here. And in the formula bar, if I go to my page number 5, there my formulas are there. And then you will see the subtract. Yeah, it will show you.
Okay.
The viewers will also. That's what I remembered, that formula bar is available for viewers also. They might not be able to change this, or maybe, yeah, they will not be able to change it most likely. And but it is at least visible, and then they can see. But they have to enable the formula bar to see the actual formula. Good question, though. Yes.
Thank you.
So this is basically how you will do the simple calculations, and the simple calculations can be edited using the formula bar, and that formula bar has to be enabled. Then if you go here, now let's continue with our actual calculations, full-fledged calculations. It's already 9:40. Do you guys want to take a break before I delve into the actual calculations, or are you okay to continue?
Would like to take a break.
Okay. So 9:40, it's my time. Let's come back in 10 minutes. 9:50, we will resume our actual full-fledged calculation discussions. Okay. Yeah, I'll pause the recording. Thank you. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay. Let me share my screen back. All right, annotation, let me switch it on. Okay, so can you hear me okay and see my screen? Can one of you just unmute and confirm?
Yes, Devanshu.
Okay, thank you. So we were discussing the simple calculations. So simple calculations are basically doing a right click and then either repeating or single, and then you can go from there. So that's what we did on page number 5. And now we will save this story. Okay, anyways, there is no start, so there are no unsaved changes. So that's great. So we can keep this headers on 1, 2, 3, 4 on the rows and columns. We have the alphabets, so that's okay. We can keep that on. Now I will do the actual story calculation, the full-fledged one. So one I already did. So what I will do is I will instead of 3 model measures, because it becomes a little long and then you have to scroll right and left. So it's a little bit of inconvenience. So what I'll do is I will go to the filter and I will deselect our order value and customer meetings. I don't need that for now. I just want to have the unit sold. So that way it will be a little clearer and cleaner. And then you can resize it so that it fits together and it is close to each other. And this is our unit sold, direct customers unit sold, retail customers unit sold, wholesale customers unit sold for mountain bikes. For racing bikes, these are the units sold. In Canada, we didn't have any sale of the racing bikes, unfortunately. So we don't have any data there, but we have data for retail and wholesale customers. So that's good. So let me save this. Now, the first type of calculation we already achieved actually, which is our restricted measure, unit sold Canada. Okay. So unit sold Canada, now you can edit it, go to the builder panel, and in the builder panel, you will see one story calculation, and that is my subtract for customer segment, and then actual ones are under the measure. Again, one story calculation, one model measure. So one story calculation is unit sold Canada. If you click on this FX, you will see that this is how we configured. See, enable constant selection. I'm just going to give you the theoretical knowledge. You can do as a homework, this enable constant selection, what it does. So basically what happens is, sometimes we need a constant value. And that constant value is with respect to either a date dimension. Usually it is with a date dimension, but it can be with respect to other dimensions also. So let me give you a business scenario where constant selection will be used, and then it will make sense. So I want that there should be a unit sold value for 2018, which should be constantly visible in my story. Even if I change the input control to 2019, that should not impact this particular measure, which is restricted to 2018, right? Because what happens is, if you select the input control here in the values, right now it is member values, but if you change to some other dimension, say for example, my date dimension, and then you can have the input controls also. So you have input control, new input control. So if your date is driven by the input control, right? But you still want it to be a constant selection. You don't want that the filters which are chosen on the input controls should not impact this particular measure. It should be as a constant value. It should be shown. Why? Because I might need that for a calculation I'm doing. I'm doing a reference calculation where I always need 2018 to be there as a constant. In those cases, you will go for enable constant selection, which will preclude this value to be impacted by the filters what you are choosing. It will still stay as 2018. It's not going to change to 2019, even though if you choose 2019 on the filters, the input controls and the filters. So that's why the enable constant selection is used. This is also a feature which is there in BW. Constant selection was also there in BW in the query. On the query side, we had this feature. So same kind of functionality SAC is also given. Okay. So let me go back to my country and I will select either you can have an input control, but I don't want that to be dynamic right now. I just want to fix it to Canada only. And I will go back and do my ID and we'll say Canada. Okay, so unit sold Canada is here. Let me save it again. So this is my first type of calculated measure, which is the type restricted measure. Then I will create another calculation. So again, I will go to triple dots and then I will add a calculation here. And now I want a calculation which is Canada units sold percentage of the units sold. Like I want to, actually this name is not good. So percentage Canada units sold. That means what percentage of Canada units sold is there compared to the other units sold. So that's basically a calculation. So what I will do here is I will just give the same description here, percentage Canada units sold. And here I will say, now what is the friend I have to call here? Control space. The moment you press control space, then all your functions, etc. will come. And if you hover over them, you will see that you have an actual description, you have a syntax and the real example also you can see here. And if you scroll all the way down, you will start seeing the measures which are available in your model for this calculation. So on the top, if you scroll to the top, these are all your functions. And then at the bottom, you will see all these are our measures. So what we want is the Canada units sold divided by the units sold. Again, control space. Either you come all the way down and select that particular, or you can also start typing like unit, UNIT. Then it will also show you the measures which are starting with units sold. So we want the total units sold, not the United States or Canada. So because the denominator has to be the units sold. That's how the percentage I will calculate. So this is my formula, units sold. I don't have to multiply it with 100 because I'm going to change the format to percentage. That will automatically show it as a percentage. So click on this format to see if the valid formula is valid or not. Yes, it is valid. And then we'll say OK. Now you will see we have two story calculations in the measures. One is my units sold Canada, which was a restricted measure. And now this is a calculated measure, which is your percentage Canada units sold. So now if you come here, percentage Canada units sold doesn't make a lot of sense because this is an absolute number. This is not percentage. So I'm going to change that. So again, go to builder panel and come to the measure story calculation, percentage Canada units sold. Click on the formatting option. And here you deselect this first. Then only you will be able to overwrite the underlying measure formatting. And then I will choose percentage here. Decimal, I just want maybe 1, not 2. And sign is not really, I think, required, but you can also do that. Plus minus for negative, positive, or brackets. You can also put negative values in brackets. That's also possible, but we will keep it as default, which is your negative, positive. And then you will say OK. And now it starts to make a little bit more sense that the Canada unit sold is basically my what percentage of the unit sold. So 0.7% for retail customers. And because the retail is 366, 366 is 0.7% of 54,889. That's why it's showing 0.7%. 2,874 wholesale is 2.7% of 106,210. That's why it's showing 2.7%. So this is my percentage Canada units sold. How much percentage of units of the total units sold is my Canadian? So that is basically your calculation. So this was my restricted measure, and this is a calculated measure where I'm showing percentage. So I'll save it. Yeah, I'm going to put everyone on mute again just to be sure. Okay, so I have created two types. One is my restricted measure, one is my calculated measure. Now I'm going to create the third type, which is my, again you go to measures and then triple dot, add calculation, and I'm going to say difference from. So if you remember from the theory, difference from is difference of the measure with respect to dates. So this I will say difference from previous year. Okay, previous year. Now, actually, for previous year, I have to have date dimension. So what I will do is I will actually cancel this. I will create a duplicate of this page. Okay, and we are going to rename this page so that it makes more sense. Page 1, 2, 3. This is not a good naming convention. So what I will rename this page, our page 5 is, I will edit title and I will say, this is my restricted and calculated. And this one I will give difference from, so that you know that which one we can easily refer back and go back to the respective type of the calculation. And then I'll save it. And let's rename these also so that we immediately know why we have multiple pages. So this is my dashboard. Okay. And then my page 2 is my canvas. So I'll just say canvas. And then page 3 is my R visualization. Okay. It takes some time. Whenever you open R visualization, it will take few seconds because it's running the script behind the scenes. So that's why it is taking some time, but it should show you the word cloud which we configured. Okay, there you go. So now we will save this. Any changes, don't forget to save. And this one, what did we do here? Page 1. Let's see. So let's hit save. What do we have on page 1? Okay, we were just duplicating this and seeing this simple calculations, right? So we will write it as simple calculations. Didn't we do simple calculation here? Okay, that is not here. So I'll put this simple calc. And here we don't have though simple calc. So I will just put a repeating simple calculation quickly so that we know it is already there. So retail wholesale, add client calculation, subtract, repeating, so that we know it will repeat for everything, and then I'll save it. Okay, this looks much more clearer now. What are we doing in different pages? So now we have restricted, calculated, measures, and then we have difference from. So in the difference from, I've just duplicated this and then renamed it to difference from this page. Okay, and then what we'll do is we are going to change some dimensions here because difference from needs date dimension. So that's why I'm going to go back to my builder panel. On the measures, I will say add calculation. Before that, what I will do is I will add the date dimension here. So I will go to date so that it's visible. And date is in hierarchical format. By default, we have hierarchy. Okay, product type, I'm just going to remove for now. So we have date, and if you expand the date, you have year, quarter, month, that hierarchy is there. So if you expand that, we have the 3 different years, and then you expand the different years. We have your quarters, and under quarters, we have your different months, and under months, we have days. So that's the default hierarchy. Okay. So difference from. So what we will do is we will remove customer. No, I don't want to remove it. So what I can do is I will add one more. Yeah. And I'll reorder it so that the difference from is shown right here. So what I will do is I will go to measures, triple dot, add calculation. Now the third type is difference from. So we will say difference from previous year. Same description I'll give. Sorry. Okay. What I want, we want order value. Unit sold. And time dimension is my date. Okay. So we have the date dimension here, which is called time dimension here. So measure and the dimension you have to choose. First thing, step number 1. Then you have to say, what do you want to compare with what? A versus B. Both should be applicable to the measure and the time dimension. That is mandatory. So that's why I'm saying the date or time dimension is a mandatory thing for difference from. Now, once I have set my measure and I have provided the date dimension here, now I have to tell what do I want to compare. So select time value. So I want to compare the current time interval. Current time interval means whatever is here in my navigation, current time interval, to previous n time intervals. So here I will say 1. So previous 1. So that means if I am looking at year level, then previous year. If I am looking at the quarter level, previous quarter, etc. That's how I'm making it dynamic by saying n time intervals. Then I will click on this show value for all time intervals. Why? Because I have hierarchy. If you have hierarchy in your dimension, date dimension, then you have to click on this. Why? Because it calculates that nth previous time interval independent for each of the levels. So if you hover over this, it will tell you that the previous time interval will be calculated independently for each level of the time hierarchies. Values will not be aggregated across the hierarchy. So if you want aggregations, the regular aggregation, you can go for that. But if you want that the previous should independently get calculated for each level, then you select that. And then you can have an option whether you want to see that difference in percentage or you want to see that difference in absolute value. So percentage and then absolute base value means negative value it will ignore. So if negative 35 has to be compared to negative 45, it's going to disregard the signs and it will say 35 versus 45, what is bigger? And I'm going to show the difference accordingly. So that's why there's an absolute base value by default, but you can deselect that as well. And then you have a divide by to value B also there for the absolute base value calculation, for the difference calculation. So basically, what am I doing here? I am calculating a measure value. Measure is important here. Measure is required with respect to date dimension. And I'm saying that compare my current time interval, whatever is there in my navigation, to my previous n time intervals, which is my previous 1. I want to go back by 1. Whether it can be 1 year, 1 quarter, that depends on which hierarchy level you are looking at. So that's what you can do. And this is basically your year-on-year comparison, quarter-on-quarter, automatically that will enable this. And then I'm saying that I want to see that as a percentage and I want to see that independently of each level. And when there are two negative numbers you have to compare, then don't consider the sign, always consider the base value, absolute value. Okay, I'll say okay. Now you will see I have 3-story calculation. Units sold Canada, percentage Canada units sold and difference from previous year. And if you hide this, then this is my difference from previous year calculation. So if I'm looking at yearly level, then you see we have 78.76%. For 2017, there is none because we don't have 2016. So we don't have the previous year to compare to. So we have 2018, which will compare to 2017. We have 2019, which will compare to my 2018 and 2020. Again, I don't have data for that. So basically it has minus 100, 100, 100 because it has not, it doesn't have the 2020. So basically it will apply to 19 and 18. So this is what the percentage is, 78.76% for direct customers from previous year. Okay. So this is my units sold. Remember this. What is the measure? You have to, okay. Maybe we should rename this so that we know which measure this belongs to. So open the builder panel, go to my 3-story calculation, difference, go to the FX and then rename it to difference from previous year, units sold, so that you give a context. Otherwise, you might wonder which measure is this connected to. Okay, and I'll say okay. So You see here, we have the difference from previous year, direct customers 78.76%. So direct customers units sold was 42,048. And then we have 75,163, which is for 2018. So if you do the math, if I open the calculator, let's verify if this is the correct or not. So what you have to do is you have to subtract. I'm doing it in calculator. Maybe you're not seeing my calculator. So what I'm doing is 75,163, this value for 2018. Okay, direct units sold minus my previous year 42,048. So 42,048. I'm subtracting that. I'm getting 33,115. 33,115 is what percentage of 42,048? So 33,115 divided by your 42,048, which is your 78.7%. That's what it shows, 78.76. So basically what it is showing is that the number of units sold in this year is 78.76% more than the previous year. So 76.76% of 42,000 is 33,115. So if you add 33,115 here, you will get 75,163. So that is how the calculation is working. Previous year units sold. For direct, same thing it will happen for this. Wherever it is negative, that means I sold less amount. Okay, not more amount. Like for example, for my 2019, of course, we have the 33,000 compared to 75,000. So it is less. I sold less in 2019. So it is my negative minus 55.9%. So this is my difference from previous year. And if you expand this time hierarchy, then it will calculate for quarters as well. Previous quarters. That's how the dynamic time interval will work. That's why we gave time interval, which makes it dynamic. So for every level of the hierarchy, you will get difference from previous year. If you expand quarter one, then you will get the month, and month wise also it will compare to the previous month of the previous year, and then it will compare and see how the difference is there. For February, it is going to compare from the previous month. For March, previous month. If you expand it to only quarters, then quarter versus quarter. If you only highlight the year, then year versus year. So it automatically adjusts to the hierarchy level, what hierarchy level you are expanding to. And that's how you can dynamically calculate your difference from previous year. Difference from previous year always needs time dimension, and it also needs a measure. So it is connected to a measure. Okay, so that is what is your difference from. So let's save it. And then we will duplicate this again. So I'm going to click on this down arrow and I will say duplicate. And then now here, what we will say is I will edit the title. What is my next one? Let's see what is the name of the next one. So now I'll create another one. So I'll go into measures, 3 dots, add calculation. Now there is aggregation. Okay. So what I will do is aggregation means anything which is other than sum. Of course, sum is also there, but basically when we do aggregation, our intention is not to do the regular sum. Our intention is to do other than sum, like count or average or minimum, maximum, and so on and so forth. So I will say average units sold. Okay. And then instead of sum, see how many other ones I have. I have count, count dimensions, count excluding null, count excluding zero null, minimum, maximum, average, average excluding null, first value, last value, standard deviation, median, first quartile excluding null, third quartile. So all these are aggregations which are other than sum. And for us, which we will use exclude average excluding null, null values I don't want to see. And what is the measure? The measure is my units sold. And by what dimension I want to aggregate it? I want to aggregate it based on my date dimension. Average as per the date. You can also use conditions, okay? Only when the condition is satisfied, then the aggregation will happen. Otherwise, it will not consider those rows which do not satisfy the condition. If you want certain requirement like that, then you can check the condition aggregation. But for us, we don't have any such condition. We want to apply this average to all the rows for units sold. You can also use aggregate dimension other than date. The reason I chose date is because we have the date dimension in our rows. So that's why, but other than you can choose any other as well. So I'll just choose date and then I will say okay. And then I will rename this to aggregation. And I will make this bigger. Now, unnecessary, these things I don't want to see because already we have these here. So what you can do is you can say units sold, percentage Canada units sold, difference from previous year, right click and hide column. So if you don't want to see certain columns, you can also hide them. So I'm just going to hide them for now because I want to see the average. So this is my average unit sold for the navigation. Whatever navigation I do, those are my average units sold. Okay. So say for example, in 2018, so what is the average unit sold for direct customers? 6263.58 units sold. How is it calculating? So if you expand 2018, you have 17,000, 21,000 and 17,000 and units sold for direct and average units sold for direct. It is coming to my 6263. How is it coming 6263? It should
For each day. For each day.
Okay. So what is happening is basically it's I think taking this plus this plus this time divided by 3 is your 6263. Let's do the math if it is doing that. So if you open calculator, you will add what will you add? You will say because aggregation, okay, aggregation means it is going to take the lower hierarchy levels and it is going to aggregate at a higher hierarchy level, right? So lower hierarchy level is my quarters. So quarter value is 5687, 7042 and 5683. So if you add that if I can type well, 5687 plus 7042 plus 5683.33 divided by my 6.
Quarter 4 also.
Oh, yes, quarter 4 is there. Sorry. Yes. So that means it is my 18412 plus the quarter 4. So 18412
Put down or what?
plus
Why these
my
are small?
6641 divided by 4 now. Yeah, it is 6263 point. Exactly. So what it is doing here is it is taking the lower hierarchy level value and it is aggregating as an average. Similarly, if you expand Q1 average, this value is basically the average of this plus this plus this divided by 3. You're getting the point? So that is what is happening for an average unit sold. Same thing will happen for retail and same thing will happen for wholesale. So any higher hierarchy level, excuse me, will summarize as an average. So here quarter 1, 2, 3 average will be shown at 2018. And if you expand quarter 1, then the month average will be shown for quarter, so on and so forth. So that's how it is showing. Now, at a year level, it is this plus this plus this divided by 3 is your 6265. I think, right? Let's do the final calc. At a year level also, I want to see if that is exactly what happening. So 6006.86 plus 6263.58 plus 6629.80 divided by 3 which is your, no, this is coming to 6300.08. So I think here at an overall level, it is taking all the under hierarchy, and I don't know why it is.
So 2020 year is also there, divided by 4 it has to.
But okay, maybe it is taking the no, but that will become too low then, right?
47
Yeah, always date.
It will go at
always
the date
date
level. It will always go at the day level, at the
Day
lowest
level.
granularity. And then it will calculate the average.
For the entire
For the
overall.
entire, all the records it will consider, all those 2000 records, and then it will calculate the average.
Sometimes in January you might have sales only for 5
Yeah.
days. February maybe 10 days.
Yes.
Who knows? Like it's all depend upon the granularity of the data. So maybe date is not a right exactly appropriate.
It's-
Maybe by customer, by something, by something.
It's never sum of the averages.
No, it's not sum. It's basically the average value for all the lower dimension values.
Lowest, even quarter, it will go to month, even month, it will go to the date. It will always go to the date.
But then
But-
overall average should always match, right? Otherwise, the below average values, below level average values should still be incorrect then.
Correct.
I mean, if Q2 is calculated, then the underlying values in Q2, that average should come to Q2 properly. Then for 2017,
That's right, exactly.
and then the total should
And
also
then-
match the.
No, but even if you do at a year level, Q2, Q3 and Q4 are not summed up. That also will become an average for the different quarters. And within Q3, it will go to month level, and within month, it will go to day level if you have multiple days. Okay, so that is how you will do average, but you can have many more like first value, last value. Sometimes we want to use first value, last value specifically for the non-cumulative key figures, like we used to have an inventory. So if you have those requirements where you want to take the first value or the last value, and yes, date might not be always the relevant one. You might be, you should take product sometimes and the customer and see average value for units sold for that particular customer. If you have a hierarchy in the customer, like for example, we have segment. So within that segment, whatever are the customers coming, it will average them out and then it will show you the average for that particular segment. Like we have the 3 segments like direct, retail, wholesale. So if you have the customer there or the product type, maybe mountain bikes versus your racing bikes, then within mountain, whatever you have will be averaged to mountain and so on for the racing bikes as well. So basically those, apart from the sum, other than the sum, you can do all the other types of aggregation also easily here. Okay, let's save it. Then we will do the next one, which is, again, I'm going to duplicate this. Okay. And we will do the next one. So select this, the builder panel. Okay, let me bring in the highlighter. Yeah. Next one, so now 4 story calculations. I'm going to create the 5th one. 5th one, again, go here, add calculation, and then go for date difference. Yes. See, another reason I chose date here is because the date dimension relevant calculations like your difference from or your date difference, that you can visualize because the date dimension is there in your rows. So what is date difference? If you remember from the theory, this has nothing to do with any measure. This is basically only dealing with the difference between 2 or more dates. Actually 2 dates. So we will say date difference from current date. So current date, or no, not this, number of months from or number of months versus no, number of months from current date. So that means what we are calculating, if I want to subtract the time interval, whatever I am seeing here, compared to the current date, I want to subtract that. And what granularity I want after the subtraction, I want the month's granularity. Then you have to choose month here. So you have day, month, year, seconds, minutes, and hours. It can go all the way down to seconds as well. But usually we need at a month level or a year level or a day level. So we will stick to month for now. So because I'm saying number of months from current date. So number of months from current date, there the difference will be calculated. So what is my time horizon? What I need to compare? So first I gave the granularity. At what granularity the difference I need. Now I have to tell that what are the two date dimensions from which the difference will be calculated. The subtraction should happen between what two? So the first one is current date. Current date means today's date it will take, system date. And then here I can mention the date dimension. Okay, so it is basically the current date minus the date dimension. You can do the other way around also. You can choose here date and then you can choose here current date. So basically it will be the reverse. So you are saying that give me the date dimension, which is my rows, minus the current date. Okay, so I will come back and I'll say current date minus my date dimension. And then you can choose your offset. And if it is null, you can say current date time if null or empty. If there is no date found in my date dimension, it will be equated to my current date and then subtraction will become 0 months. So that you can do if you have nulls or blanks. Then I have time zone for the current date and time. If you want a specific time zone instead of the local time zone, which is set in your user profile, then you can provide that. So right now I can leave empty, but you can have all the time zones, UTC, comparative time zones you can provide here. Dimension context is date for us, and the result aggregation is average. What is result aggregation? See, although we don't have measure here, right? That's why you might be confused that why there is an aggregation option here. The thing is, if suppose the difference is calculated in months, okay? So I have current date, which is my 17th November 2024. So if you subtract that from 2017 or you subtract 2017 from 2024, how many years it is? It is 7 years. 7 years means how many months? 84 months. So 84 will be the calculation from the date difference for 2017. For 2018, it will be my 6 years. So 72. Then 2019, it will be 5 years. So it will be 60. Right? So those will be the values which will come after the date difference will be calculated. But if I remove date dimension from my story or from my table, then it has to aggregate these numbers. These 84, 62, and then the 60, all these have to be aggregated because you no longer has date dimension. So if that situation happens, how do you want SAC to aggregate those numbers? That's what you are mentioning here. So by default, it is average, but you can have some min, max, average, first, last. But by default, it is going to average it out. So if you remove date, it's going to average the number of months. So that is the difference between two dates. That is what is called date. Okay. Click on OK.
Divanshu, can you repeat the last sentence? Date difference summation, that average. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm saying is date difference. Look at this date difference. Okay, I'm going to remove this average sold out. Okay, and the unit sold also, just so that it is clear. Number of months. Yeah. Okay. So what is this 76.5, 85, 88, 86? How did this come? This is basically the number of months between the current date and 2017, right? Current date is 2024 and it is 2017. So how many years? 7 years. 7 years means how many months? Around 84, 85 months. So that's what it is calculating. And because it is going to the exact month, that's why it's saying 85. So this is 85 months difference from current date. 2018 is 75.5 months. 2019 is 67 months. So these are all months for direct customers, for retail customers, for wholesale customers. Now, if I remove date from the dimension completely, so if I come here and instead of date, I will just put something else. Maybe I'll put customer segment is already there, product, and I will remove the date. Or let me not put anything and just remove date. That will aggregate the values. So you see here, first take a note of these values. So we have 85, 75, 67. If I remove that, it is going to average it out. So this aggregation, that suppose the dimension is removed from the story, how do you want SSE to aggregate the numbers? Do you want the average to be there? Do you want sum to be there? Do you want first value, last value? Those things it is asking you in that particular configuration. Give me the aggregation. Now it's clear to him because date is very much visible there. So the calculation can easily happen. But sometimes in charts, you have to remove the date dimension and put some other dimension. Then how should it aggregate these values? Should it average it out? Like it, in the top itself, you can see that it is averaging it out and it is not summing it up. Whereas if you tell it to sum it up, so if I go back here, number of months, FX, and then here instead of average, I'm going to say sum them up. If the dimension is not there in my table or chart, then it's going to sum it up. So it's summing it up all the below. So from here all the way back, it's calculating and it's summing it up. So 88 months, total 176, 176 plus 516, 1190 plus everything total at the very top, it will come to 3672. So this is the summing up all the months. First it is calculating all the way down to the day level, then it is summing up at the top. So this is the aggregation behavior. You have to tell if the date dimension, suppose if it is removed or if it is summed up, then how do you want? Do you want regular sum or do you want average or do you want minimum? So on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to put by default average because that makes sense. Yeah, this is more meaningful. And this is your date difference. So let's rename it to date difference. Let it save. And I will click on annotate again. Let me rename this to date difference. And then finally, what we will do is we will duplicate this again. Okay. And now we will create another one, which will be your next one. So now we have 5 story calculations. I'll go again, add calculation. Now I'll say dimension to measure. Okay. So I can actually say convert my dimension to measure. So what I will say is we will convert latitude. Okay, as a measure. Because we have the numeric value there. So we can convert that. Dimension attribute to convert. Which property you want to convert? So first you will have to say where is my country latitude? Okay, so latitude I want to convert, and automatically dimension context is taken from the dimension property, and result aggregation is again the same thing. If you remove that particular dimension, or if you sum it up, aggregate it, do you want the aggregation behavior to be sum or min, max, average, etc.? Okay. Again, this is not a very good example, doesn't make a lot of business sense, but this is a numeric value. So just as an example, I'm giving you that latitude is now converted into your numeric values, which is your decimals. So if I just remove this number of current months, hide the column. So this is what it will look like. Let me make it slightly smaller so that it comes together. Okay. So here you see, it is, I don't have the country here. So what it is doing is, it is summing it up. It is calculating at a country level and then summing up for the date. So if you want to check it for a country level, then you just go back and then add the country dimension here. And then you can remove the date dimension. Create a single value filter. Okay, because dates are multiple dates are selected. If you select a single date, then it should be okay. And we remove the date, right? So it needed a single value. So what we'll do is, in the filter, we'll quickly add a date, and then we can. But actually for this, we don't probably need a date. So here it's okay. I think it will save, it will not give any error. The other calculations need the date, like difference from or your date difference, that needed a date. So I think that's why it's complaining, because we have hidden it. So that's why it's complaining. So now we have the direct, retail, wholesale. So it is converting into numeric. Again, these numbers really don't make much sense, but this is a possibility that any property value, which is a numeric value, should not be an alphabet, can be easily converted to a measure, and then you can do some arithmetic calculation based on that measure. A live business example is your customer, like since how many years you are associated with the customer. So a customer association aging. So if you are with the customer for last 10 years versus 12 years, 15 years, that you can convert it to a measure. So from dimension property, it becomes a measure. And then you can say that, okay, only show me those customers which are more than 10 years old or 12 years old. So, or you can add the total number of years all the customers are associated. So those kind of business requirement can be satisfied with converting dimension attribute to the measure value. Okay. So we'll rename it quickly. We'll say dimension to measure. And we'll save it.
Devanshu, sorry to interrupt you. Can we do conversion from date to measure as well? Like dimension to measure to date to measure. Suppose we have month and fiscal period, and we want to convert as a measure, because sometimes, like inventory reporting, we calculate the aging wise bucket. So that's why I asked you this question.
Yeah, so if you have the date property you want to convert, so you can try that with this dimension to measure. Yes, I think it should be possible.
Okay, Devanshu.
Try it out. It should be possible. In the property, you have to choose the date. So if I go back quickly for a minute, here you have the story calculation, and then you have the latitude. I'll go to the effects, and then instead of the country, you will choose the date, and we have the properties of the date, right? Like here it is a calendar date, but you can have fiscal dates also. So say, for example, you want to convert your cal week or week number into your numeric. So then you can say, this is my cal week. And then you will say, okay. And then it's basically adding, it's saying that date dimension is not there, which is fine. So instead of country, we'll add the date because the reference is now date, not country anymore. So here you will say all. So this is basically a number of weeks. So if you expand, then cal week is getting aggregated. Okay. So it is sum. So we will change it to maybe average. I think it was sum. Yeah. So we'll give it average number of weeks. And then you can say that these are my average number of weeks. All the way down, if you go to year, to the quarter. And then see, it depends on what is the format of cal week. So cal week format is usually Y, and then the week number. So 2019, 52, 2019, 5, 2019, 6. So it is taking that 2019, 52 as an entire number, and then it is doing the calculation and aggregation. So yes, absolutely, it should be possible. Okay. All right, next one. So now again, we just have, I think, 2 more. So just give me 5 more minutes and then we can stop for today. So we will duplicate this and then we will go here and then we will click on, now we have 6 story calculations. Again, go here, add calculation. And now we have running total. So if you just want a running total of maybe average, or running total of min or max, then you can do that. So I'll just say AVG. Okay. And then I will put this as running total of average. Then I will say not min max, average. And what is the measure for which I want the running total? Again, unit sold, because we are dealing with unit sold right now. And the running total, what with respect to what which dimension? Right now I have date dimension here, so I'm going to choose date here, and I'll say okay. And then a running total average will be calculated here. Okay. So this is again a running total. So if I just filter on direct only. So let me filter. So right click and you can say filter member. That will only restrict it to only that particular member, which is a direct customer. So here you can see that we have the running total for so the average, running total of average for each of them. So here we have only June. So that's why it is same thing here. But in another quarter, if you see Q3, then you have your 5067 and then 4611, 5422. These are all your average, which is coming. And for that, you have to expand all the way down to your days. And then for this, we both has the same value. So average is also same. But if you have different values for the dates, then there will be different average which will come in. Let's see if I have any different. No, I don't have any difference. But running total is basically your average of all the way down to your date. And then it is doing the aggregation on the top, which is your regular one. But all the way to the down, it is doing the average calculation. So that's your running total. Okay, let's rename it. Running total average. And lastly, what I want to show you is the calculated dimension. Okay, so far we have been dealing with the calculated measures. So we have been dealing with the measures here, but as we discussed in the theory, it is also possible to have calculated dimensions. So how will you do that? Now, if you will come to add dimensions here, where is my annotation gone? Okay, so now if you'll click on add dimensions, you will see here we have all the dimensions. Okay, we also have cross calculation here, but for the measure based model, the cross calculation usually is not supported. But we are talking about the calculated dimension. So where will you find that? This is the option of create calculated dimension. What is basically the need for creating calculated dimension? Sometimes what happens is you want to combine different values of the dimension. Like you want a grouping of 2 dimension. So say for example, I have my customer segment and I have my product type. I don't want to see them as 2 different measures. Oh, sorry, 2 different dimensions. So suppose I add customer segment. Okay, customer segment is already there. So what I will do is I will bring the customer segment to my rows. I will remove the date from here and I will add the product type also. Okay. So I have my customer segment and I have a product total. I will remove this. I will hide this column running total average. And this also I don't need. I will add a simple measure. Okay, so it is saying that I have 7 total measures. Okay, let me go back. I can remove those, but I just want to show you the dimensions because I removed date. That's why it's giving me the problem. Okay, let's do this. So I will remove all the calculated ones from here. I will just keep units sold. Okay. Customer segment is direct. I will remove that filter. Measure is units sold. And customer segment. Why is it not coming? The measures. Simple units sold. Is there any filters which is stopping it? No. There's one model measure units sold and one story calculation subtract. No. So in the rows, I will also just put all. Let me remove this and put the customer segment. And I will add, but why it's not showing the measures? I have all of them. Usually this happens when there is a filter which is stopping it. Okay, let me do this. You mean expand it? No, I don't think measure is coming here. Okay, let me do this. Let me remove this particular widget. So I'm going to go triple dot and remove it. Okay, then I will just go to the dashboard and copy this widget again, the table, because we did a lot of calculations and so we have hidden those. So they might be playing tricks in the backend. So what I will do is I will copy this, copy to, and running total average. Let me, this is performance. So I will add a responsive page and we'll rename this first so that it can easily have identifiable. I will say calculated dimension. And then I will go to my dashboard and copy this. Okay, Control C and come here. Control V. Sorry, again twice. I'm going to get rid of one of them. Yeah, let me make it bigger. Okay, now if I go back to my builder, I will add 2 dimensions here. Property of the dimension. One is my customer segment and the other one is my product type. Because I have them as the property, that's why you can see in the expansion, you will see the properties of these dimensions. Date has its properties, customer has its properties. So whatever dimensions they will have property, they will have this expansion button or the arrow, and then you can expand and choose the property. So I have sales agent, I will remove. I have customer segment and product type. Yeah, this is much better and cleaner. So I have my customer segment and product type. This is one way to look at the data. And of course, this is my conditional formatting. That's why you're seeing it in green. But sometimes the requirement is that combine these two. I don't want to see them separately. I want to see one dimension. Okay. That dimension is not there in my model, but I still want a calculated dimension where you combine the name. So now I should see direct mountain, direct racing, retail mountain, retail racing, wholesale mountain, wholesale racing, or the other way around. Mountain direct customers, racing direct customers, and then mountain retail customers, racing retail customers, so on and so forth. Right? If you want to do that, then we create calculated dimension. Sometimes there's a requirement like that. So what you will do is, instead of showing two dimensions, you will create a calculated dimension. And then you click on calculated dimension, and here you will say my product and segment. Okay, product and customer segment. And then same thing you can say product and customer segment are concatenated. And this is where you will do the concatenation of both these dimensions. So control space and type product. So you will have the product. And then I have to concatenate. So for concatenation, you need a plus sign. When plus sign is used between measures, it actually aggregates. But when plus sign is used with dimensions, it concatenates. So what I will say is this plus a space between the two. So space and then again plus and control space segment. Segment is was customer, right? Okay. Now, what I want is not the actual product and the customer, because that's not there in my rows. What I have in my rows is the segment of the customer and the type of the product. So it is product type and customer segment. But here, when I did control space, I don't see those properties. So if I go back quickly, I'll show you. Control space is not showing me the properties. Control space is only showing me the actual dimensions which are there. Now I know that the segment is a property of the customer and type is a property of product. So how you can access those is put, so for product, for example, okay, put a dot and then again press control space. When you hit control space after a dot, then it brings the properties of the dimension. And then you can choose for product, I want the type. And that will become in yellow, that will come in yellow. And all the dimensions will be suffixed with the letter D/, and all the products will be suffixed with the letter P/. So P/ means it's a property and D/ means it's a dimension. Properties P/, dimension D/. Properties will be in a different color than dimension, just so that it can be easily identified. And then same thing for customer, put a dot here and then control space. It will bring up the properties of customer and which property we want to concatenate, segment. So we want to concatenate the product type property of the product dimension with a space in between and customer segment property of customer dimension. And I want one single dimension.
The space?
Sorry?
How did you enter the space? Is it single quotes, double single quotes?
Single quotes and close single quotes. Like this. Or you can say one space and then single quotes. So what I did was after the plus, I hit a single quotes, then I hit space on my keyboard and then close with a single quote again.
And we can use in the single quotes custom text as well.
Yes, you can use custom text as well. Like for example, if you want to use product and so you can use that as well. To format this valid formula and then say okay. Now product customer segment is one dimension. So I don't need segment and the type as separately. Now I have mountain and direct, mountain and retail, mountain and wholesale, racing and direct, racing and retail, racing and wholesale. So now it became from 2 dimensions, it became 1 dimension. So mountain and direct, mountain and retail, 1 wholesale. So if this is the requirement, sometimes it is the requirement. So this dimension is not there in my model. So I created this dimension, and in dimension creation, I used the properties. So that's what in the theory also it said, when you create calculations, either a dimension calculation or a measure calculation, you can use properties of the dimension. And the way you call up the properties of the dimension is through a dot. So the dimension name, dot, then hit control space, it will bring up the properties. And that's how you can do a custom dimension, which is not there in the model, but still you can create like that. Okay, so that is what is a calculated dimension. Calculated dimension is doesn't need measures. It basically concatenates 2 different dimensions, or you can do other operations. But usually, what I have done is concatenation if for one of the requirements. But there are other possibilities as well. But this is how you can do aggregated dimension, or sorry, calculated dimension. Okay, I'll save this. Okay, so we are way over today as well. Sorry about that. I know we went half an hour over, but this was very important for me to cover the all types of calculations plus a calculated dimension. And of course, these are very simple examples. You have to play around, do some hands-on, and you can do, as you can see, how powerful it can be. One more thing is, you can have stacked calculations as well. Stacked calculation means you created one restricted measure, and you are using that restricted measure in a calculated measure, and then that calculated measure again you are using in another calculated measure, so on and so forth. So you can have a hierarchy of these calculated measures. There is no stopping you from there, and then that makes it more dynamic and very powerful. But again, a word of caution, don't go overboard with this. Don't create 50, 60, 70 story calculations, because then your performance will also get degraded. So although it is very powerful, but it can become a pain as well if not used judiciously. Okay, so with that, we will stop the class for today. Thank you very much for your patience. Again, we went half an hour over, but this was an important topic, so I didn't want to, rush into that. All right, thank you very much. I'll stop the session for now for the main class, and then we will enter the post-session Q&A. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to stop.